to really learn, because our purpose here is to learn these organizing skills, right? To get to meet each other and figure out how we're going to work together. So take about 30 seconds to think about some of the things, some of the norms that have allowed you to do that in the past. And then ask folks to share out. So take 30 seconds just quietly to yourself.
I'm from Champlain Valley, Vermont. And I did a lot of thinking from our experience yesterday. And I remembered something that was really useful to encourage participation. In small groups, if we could only share once until everyone's shared, then it opens up, you know, and then the facilitator, if there's someone who's holding back, the facilitator can say, you know, are we ready to move on? And then, you know, if someone's eager to share twice, then that would happen. And in a big group, it would help me, and I don't know about anybody else. If you're really eager to share a lot, if you could just try to share only twice in the day or twice in the morning or some sort of mode of come like that.
So that's a great way. And was there a story of us?
Yes.
Now, when did that transition happen? What was the transition?
He started talking about the declaration.
Okay, so that was where there was a particular phrase he used though. That was where he. So I'm going to come back to you on that because that's where he starts talking about. But what was the transition?
I thought it was when he transitioned from his parents' story to our story. He said with his name, believing they gave me this name, believing that in a tolerant America.
So he references, there's some foreshadowing, right? Exactly, starting to talk about the America, but there's a particular phrase where he says it's really, it's pretty stark. That's it. That's the next transition. We're getting there. Yeah. Okay, so we're getting around it. He says, my story is part of the American story. Right? It's a very clear transition from I to us. And then, was there a story of now?
Yeah.
And what was the transition from us to now? We still, I heard it here, we still have more work to do. We still, and the crowd cheered. They were happy he was going to move to story of now. But it was a very clear transition. So those are things. And let's step back to the story itself very quickly. What was the first choice in that story? And who made that choice? His grandfather, right? What was the choice he made? To come to America. And what does that tell you? What would that require to come to America?
He was motivated. He was attracted by the American dream. He had hope.
Okay, so we had hope, motivation. What else is required to come across the country?
His grandfather.
Right. So it's communicating some value, something about hope, about family, about opportunity. Yeah. Was there any others? Is there some courage there? It requires some courage to come. Yeah. So it's telling you a lot. What was the next choice?
There was also humility.
Okay.
Because he had to work as a cook.
Oh, okay. So when he came, okay.
No, the grandfather. Right, that's my point. The grandfather had to work as a cook. To the British.
Right.
To send to
Right, and that connected with you. I told you something about it. So what was another choice that was made that shared about his story of who he was? What was another choice? The choice to marry his mother. And what was it about that choice that was unique?
It was unique because it was an interracial marriage.
Yeah. And that term, I hear the term, improbable love. What a term, right? Tells you something. And what does that communicate? Some tolerance, but between, like, what is the, courage, love, right? There's some of these values coming out, right? And both family sides, so we communicate that through stories as well. There's one other choice that was made. There were a bunch of choices made in the story itself, but there's another one that I'm thinking of. Yeah.
His grandfather's choice to enlist.
Okay, so that was another one. His grandfather's choice to enlist, right? He's made some commitment to the country. There's another one that's pretty interesting. Yeah.
Educated to the GI Bill.
Okay, so there was a choice to go to education, but a choice probably tells you about who he is and who his parents were. Barack, right? And what was it about Barack? Yeah, exactly, right? And that tells you something about who they are, the values they have, right? So, in the interest of time, we could talk about this for a long time, but What do you remember about the story of us? And you were hinting at it already.
Well, well, I know that the transition was my story is American story, but you talked about the Declaration.
The Declaration of Independence, right?
Yeah.
And why the Declaration of Independence and not the Constitution, right? What does the Declaration of Independence mean? It's a statement of equality, right? So it's kind of an embedded choice, where we're talking about choices. It's actually the choice that he made, of Barack, to include that, because he's trying to get the value of equality, right? Yep.
Also, it goes about the American dream of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness.
Yep. So he's going back to the roots of, what is it, the founding, the founding documents of this country. So that's who we are. And it's like, right? It's like, it feels as present today as it did then, right? He means that. One more here, and then we move to story now.
One of the most interesting things I found about it was that he said, America is great not because of the strength of our army or because of the strength of our economy, but independence. So like his focus on bringing out what is great about America was not, what the world perceives us, but what our values are as Americans that we talk about here.
Right, and he made those values real through story. He didn't just say, we value equality, and right? It was through the story. And so, I see your hand over there, but I'm gonna make sure we move on. I just wanna make sure we get to story of now. What do you remember about that? So he made this transition, he said, we have more work to do. What do you remember about that? What connected?
The stories that he told about different people.
Which one do you remember? What others to help out? What do you remember? Which were stories?
Well, I don't remember the name. So he talked about job losses and he talked about a young woman who couldn't go to college.
Talked about a young woman who couldn't go to college.
And then